Hi, welcome to Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Robert Green, and joining me today as guest, Leslie. Hi.
Hi. I've never been here before.
As a guest.
Uh,
Literally true. That's not true.
no, I've been here as a guest. Yeah.
It's been a
It's been a minute as a
it
guest.
has. So we decided to switch things up a little bit today. I'm hosting, Leslie is guesting because being one of the world's foremost experts on the Visual Studio IDE, we decided to have her on and share with us some tips and tricks for being more productive. Uh, Hopefully, a bunch of things you do know, but in all likelihood, a bunch of things you didn't know or had seen once and forgot, which is typically the way it is, right? Like, I know every time I see
Yeah,
somebody
that's usually how it
use
works
the
out.
product, I'm like, oh, I need to remember to do that. Or, oh, I didn't know that existed.
Yeah.
Or, I learned about that
Yep,
2 years ago, but for some reason I don't do it. Why is that? We're going to see all
totally.
kinds of that
Yeah,
stuff,
sometimes you
right?
need some repetition to
Yeah,
remember things.
exactly.
Yeah, I'd like to say there was a rhyme or reason to the features I chose, but it really doesn't go much further beyond just these are features that I like, that I use a lot,
Mhm.
and or just think are cool and are worth sharing. And yeah, I wanted to share them with you. That said, yeah, it's a mix of old stuff. It's a mix of new stuff across different parts of your inner developer loop. And yeah, the only thing I'm not really talking about is like full on Copilot chat agent.
Okay.
If you wanna more about agent mode, which is really cool, go check out the bajillion other videos
Yeah.
that are happening about that because I do think it's cool. Actually, the app I'm using to demo today, I just, for lack of a better term, vibe coded yesterday using, mostly agent mode, so,
Ah,
uh,
okay.
really
Cool.
nifty tool. Take advantage of it. But, yeah, so most of the stuff I'm talking about is stuff where I mean, because Copilot is everywhere, I think it's in spots that organically integrate into my usual flow or integrate into features that I was already using, but just help enhance it and go that extra mile. So that's what we're talking about today.
Cool.
All right, context. This is a calculator app that I wrote with the help of Copilot. Thanks, agent mode. It's pretty basic. You just type in math problems and it'll go ahead and solve them. You can get fancy with like your order of operations and whatnot, account for all of that as well. So yeah, that's what we're working with. That's the context. It's a .NET console app, pretty straightforward. And I'm actually gonna exit out of this because I want to show you some cool stuff in VS proper. So this is the latest preview of Visual Studio. I think it's like pre D7 of 17.14. And the first thing I want to talk about is window layout. Sometimes we tend to work in different environments, which requires certain setups, or sometimes we're working under a different scenario, like maybe we're going to spend the day testing, or maybe we're going to spend the day on our three monitors versus our laptop. Like I'm currently just working on my laptop. So when I'm just working on my laptop, for example, I just have my usual kind of default layouts. The one that, aside from a couple tweaks that I've made, you typically see the moment you first install Visual Studio. But it would be great if you could actually save that layout, and you can by going into Window and then choosing Save Window Layout. I'm just gonna call this one the usual because it's kind of my default when I'm on the go. But then there's other times where I'm in the office. So I'm not in the office today. I'm in my home office and I have a lot better monitor setup in on Microsoft campus. So that's when I like to spread out. So maybe I'd expand out Solution Explorer a bit. Um, what else? I might put Copilot chat to the side.
Mhm.
Do- So do it like that, or well, I ended up moving the whole thing, but you get the idea. So
Yeah.
we're gonna move things around, heighten some windows. Cool. Yeah, if my mouse stops glitching out. And in that case, let me just do this. I gotta say, dragging and dropping live is some of the harder tasks to do, in my opinion. And it's probably because I'm not good habits. Oh, there we go. Here we go. So
There we go.
doesn't look good, but yeah, it looks better when I'm on a larger. So we can go ahead and window layout, call it more real estate. Okay, so once you have all the layouts that you want, what happens is that you can toggle back and forth between those. So you can go back to the window tab and select apply window layout and choose between the different layouts that you saved. So I can go back to my usual, and similarly, I can go back to real estate. They each come with their own keyboard shortcuts, which is helpful too. So I can easily swap back and forth between the ones I want. Really cool. Not a lot of people know about it, which is a shame because I've seen a couple like customer feedback things over the years about it would be great if you could customize your windows, and you can. That said, I still want to talk about this feature. Yeah, it's so cool. I still want to talk about the feature because my ulterior motive is that I need more people to learn about it, so that we can hopefully improve it going forward. Because I think there's a lot of room for improvement with this particular tool. Like,
Is there a limit to the
I
number
really
of
wish we
layouts
could.
you can have?
I have not tested how many you can add. I think at most I've had like 5 or 6,
Okay.
but I don't know, test the waters yourself. Yeah. That said, there is a limit on what you can do. This is mostly specific to your windows. It doesn't extend to like font size or anything like that, which I really wish it did. Because especially as a presenter, it would be awesome to just be able to toggle between like your presentation mode and your normal day-to-day work mode. So
Right.
that would be really cool. So please use this feature so that we can have more people in the dev community say that they want more stuff added to that because I think it's neat.
And do those layouts, are those roaming settings? Will they, if you create them at work and then go home, or if you have them in the GA version of Visual Studio, then you open up a pre-release, do they transfer over?
Oh, do they transfer over? Um, I want to say they do. It's been a minute since I've
Okay.
tried that. That is a good question though, but it's a give it a try for yourself. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I would hope that it would just because when you use the same account
Right.
across your VS versions, it usually tends to perpetuate the same
Yeah, it
settings that you've put in
probably
place. So
is. For some
yeah,
reason, it's not. A great thing for somebody to ask for in dev community.
totally. If
I
it doesn't, I'd file an issue on it because I feel like that is expected behavior.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, so that's window customization. The next thing I want to talk about is a little tool or setting that I like to enable called sticky scroll. So, you'll be scrolling through a large file like this one. This is where a lot of my user input based logic exists for this calculator app that I have. And sometimes it's not always quick and easy to see or maybe remember, depending on the time of day you're doing this. What method are you currently in? What class are you currently looking at? What is the context of the smack dab in the middle of the file info that you're looking at? And instead of having to scroll all the way back up, it would be cool if you had something like how in an Excel spreadsheet, for instance, you can freeze the different rows or columns so that when you scroll, you always still have that context in the back of your mind. So you can do that by turning on a feature called Sticky Scroll. I'm gonna use all-in-one search for that because I never know where anything is specifically if I just went into tools options itself. And Sticky Scroll, it's got its own section here, and you wanna just check this option. You can choose how many lines get stuck up to the top
Wow.
of the editor window. I'm just gonna stick with 5. Yeah, so you can go as little or as much as you want, but when we do that, check this out. So now when I scroll, I'm able to see
Awesome.
some of those top lines for a method or for a class or even for like a loop. So that's really cool. And then similarly, I can click if I like wanted to go back to that point in time, I could click on one of those lines and be redirected to that point. So saving me the trouble of doing some extra scrolls in order to have some more clues as to where I'm at.
That's
So
cool.
I like it. I keep it on pretty much all the time.
And that's probably been in for just about
It's
forever and a day, right?
Yeah, it was introduced in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, so in a previous 17 version, I couldn't tell you the specific one, but it's been
Okay.
in for a while now. It's pretty
Oh,
cool.
that is awesome.
Yeah, I like that one. Another cool one that is newer is next edit suggestions, which I think we talked a little bit about on this show even. But this is a new Copilot feature that is able to sort of predict what your next actions are that you might want to do. Personally, I like this feature best for when I'm working with like copy paste things or if I'm repeating a similar task, but maybe just tweaking it a tad. So in this example, I have history navigation support for my calculator, meaning that similar to if I'm just in a regular terminal, if I use my up or down arrows, I can scroll through um, my previous commands that I gave it or my previous expressions that I gave the calculator in this case. So I've accounted for my up arrow logic already, but I've not done the down arrow. So if I copy paste this as I would normally do, usually once I paste it, I'm then going to have to go in and manually tweak the logic however it needs to be tweaked.
Mhm.
So at this time, and I'm gonna hit tab to adapt the code. I'm just gonna change this to down. And now you'll see that Copilot is predicting what I intend to do next. In this case, it's expecting me to reverse the history in the opposite direction as up arrow. So I got the screen edit and it's removing the old edit. And I'm going to hit tab to accept.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to hit tab again to navigate to the next one and accept it. And it's just like this nice little flow. It's noticing that I'm also gonna need another else statement, for this particular action too. So we're gonna add that in and hit tab to remove the extra bracket, and there we go. That's it. Just
Cool.
tab away. Pretty sweet.
That's amazing.
That's really cool. Yeah, I love it. I'm not gonna talk about adaptive paste, but that is also a really cool feature that I think goes hand in hand with a feature like next edit suggestions because it's also gonna make sure your formatting is aligned with whatever task it is that you're doing, so everything stays consistent, which I think is really nice.
Is there a way to get it instead of having to tab through each individual edit, is there a way to just say, "Do it all because I trust you"?
That is a great question, and currently there's not really a way to do that yet,
Okay.
or unless there is a setting that I'm unaware of, but that is a good suggestion if you really wanna full on trust it. Personally, I haven't found the need for that yet because sometimes, Copilot's not always correct. So
Okay.
even, like, when I'm just in Copilot chat vibe coding for when I was writing this app, I was like, "Okay, go step by step what you're gonna do. Don't move on to the next step until I say so." Basically, that's, like,
Okay.
my prompt I like to use a lot. Um, yeah, but good suggestion.
Okay.
So the next thing I want to talk about is another cool setting for your editor window called Inline hints. This is one I also keep on almost at all times. Like honestly, the editor window right now for me feels naked without it because I turned it off. But sometimes you'll be looking at methods or method calls in particular or var variables, and you don't always explicitly know off the top of your head what what the type is, what the explicit type of that variable is going to be, or what is being passed through a method. Maybe you're unfamiliar with it for whatever reason. And you don't find that information out unless you hover. But doing those extra hovers, those are just like little seconds that start to add up in your development session that can be kind of annoying. It would be great if I could just see those types side by side in my editor, which is what inline hints allows me to do. So I'm gonna look up inline hints, which is also under tools options. And you can see there's a lot of different ways to customize this experience. So I could have this apply to just parameter names or types or both. So I'm gonna enable all of them because I like all of them personally, but you can get really specific. If you just wanted it for new expressions, if you're using like modern C sharp terminology, then you can do that. So if you're doing new parenthesis and it's like, I want to see the explicit type, it'll let you see that. So when we hit OK, check it out. So I can scroll around and you'll notice that there's
Oh, yeah.
now the types of the parameter values being passed. I can go back to that var variable that was up here so I can see without hovering that it's a list.
Mm.
So lots of nice little details like that that just save me the extra clicks or hovers.
So where did you type
I know for
inline
well,
hints? Where
I typed, oh yeah, I'm using all in one search, which is like the best feature ever because I don't remember anything as explicitly if I go into tool settings. So I just typed in inline, which pulled up display inline hints.
Oh, you did?
It's
Oh,
pretty cool.
there it is.
Bonus
That's
feature,
cool. Okay.
not
Yep.
gonna demo it here, but you can
Got it.
yeah.
Okay.
Bonus feature which recently got added to all-in-one search is the Ask Copilot button. So you can even ask Copilot, "What does this particular thing do now?" before you
Oh,
commit to
okay.
but I just told you what this one is, so so, yeah, I like this tool a lot. I use it all the time. Again, I know for some people this might be kinda noisy. It's not for me, but that's why you can customize it to
Mhm.
whoever you wanna customize it to.
Cool.
So, going back to that var variable, this is a hot take, but I'm personally hit or miss on var variables. Like sometimes I get it, they're clean, it makes things consistent, but sometimes I just like to be able to see the explicit type. So what if I wanted to take this to the next level and tell Visual Studio to like yell at me if I use var variables. Like, don't even build my code if I
Right.
use a var variable. And that's when you can use an editor config file, which is one of those lesser known files that not enough people use, in my opinion. So if you want to add that to your project, you can go to add, and it's so cool. It's got its own little option under the context menu. And this is a file that enables you to customize the settings of your application. Specifically, it lets you adjust your code styles, your naming styles, um, tabs or spaces, and how big each of those indentations are going to be. Just little things that help keep your app consistent and ultimately make it so that it looks like only one person wrote your code if you're working with a team. Or it's as a means to keep yourself accountable so that when you're coding at 2 a.m. versus 2 p.m., everything is still aligning correctly and Visual Studio will yell at you if you're doing something otherwise. So any settings that you set here are going to take precedent over anything that you set in tool settings. So if you set your tab size to 10 here, but it's set as 5 in tools options, then Visual Studio is going to pay attention to the editor config first before it accounts for anything in tool settings. So I like this one a lot. Again, just keeping things consistent. Specifically, I want to give a shout out to, in this case, the variable or the var variable stuff. So let me see if I can find it. One of the downsides to this is that it's a little hard to find stuff because there's a lot of different options. But uh, here's what I want. So when variable type is apparent under var preferences, currently I've got my severity level set to refactoring only. So
Okay.
I could hit the screwdriver and it could refactor it for me. However, maybe I want this to be a full on error. So it'll underline it in red and call me out if I'm uh, choosing to use a var variable. So I hit save on that. And let's go back to a place with a var where I know it exists. Here we go. Yeah, so now it's red. It's yelling at me that I need to use an explicit type, and I won't be able to build my app until I fix that. So, pretty cool.
So you could use
I am
that
gonna
to
set it back though because
yeah.
otherwise it's go back inside.
You could use that to
Mhm.
train yourself not to
But
do that. You could also use it to
mhm,
since you can check those into source control and then everybody that works on the project is bound by it. You can pull a nasty April Fool's joke
exactly.
and, you could be the hit of the team.
You sure can, yep. You're gonna be that crazy grammar police, except, like, little coding nitpick
Right.
police. But ultimately, it's gonna make everything look clean and consistent, so,
Yep.
you know, do what you gotta do. Yeah, so I mean, that was the bar variable example, but again, there's tons of other examples you can use. There's lots of different analyzer settings that you can change. There's naming styles, such as if you want to make sure people are labeling their interfaces traditionally, aka with like an I in front of it, you can do that. Currently, it's a suggestion, but you can change the severity. So yeah, really cool. Editor config. It's a tool that not enough people use, in my opinion. And if I had a wish list item for it, I really want Copilot to be able to recognize the existence of an editor config, similar to how it takes advantage of copilot-instructions.md files if you have
Yeah.
those in your app, so that it can adhere to the same sorts of formatting options and severity uh,
Oh, well, it should
suggestions
do
that it's
that.
being given. So that in the event, yeah, so, like, if I did change my severity for the var variable to error, and I ask Copilot to write me a method, with variables involved, then it's not going to give me a var. It's going to give me an explicit type because it paid attention to
Okay.
the editing config, but maybe that's an update for another one, but I have definitely expressed that as a suggestion.
Yeah.
Alright. So another cool tool I liked that I actually learned from Mads, we're gonna have an episode, with Mads soon, if you stay tuned, viewers, but it has to do with methods that you maybe don't know about or classes that you're unfamiliar with. So I'm gonna go into my expression parser class here. Basically, I have to account for parsing the expressions that the user inputs. The hardest part about writing a full calculator app. Thank you, Copilot, for doing that for me. But sometimes you might be working with methods that you're implementing something for the first time and don't necessarily know how to go about implementing or using it for the first time. And I said I was gonna use expression parser, but I'm actually gonna go back to program. I lied a little bit. Sorry. But I do want so we'll come back to expression parser, no worries. But we've got console key info is another one. That one is working with identifying key presses that you use. So I use that for when I'm scrolling through history with my up and down keyboard stuff.
Mhm.
But if you've never used this before, you can hover over and select this GitHub examples and documentation option. And when you click that, Visual Studio will give us a list of a bunch of different open source real world projects that are using that
Mm.
class in this example in a real world context. So I can scroll through and look at all the different ways it's being utilized, see if there's any patterns happening. It's pretty cool. Like
Oh,
here's
that's
one
cool.
kind of
Mhm.
similar to what I was doing earlier. I was using console.key up or console key dot up arrow, down arrow, all that. So lots of different ways to see real world examples without having to go over to like Stack Overflow or Reddit or wherever you go
And it
to
also shows
find
you
certain
the
type of
repo
info.
it got it from, which is cool.
Mhm. Yeah, so if you want the full context for what's going on, you can click and be redirected to that exact file and that repo,
Mhm.
and then you can copy directly from here too. So that's great. Bonus points because now with adaptive paste, which as I mentioned earlier allows you to paste information and then Copilot will go in and make sure it's tailored towards your particular code base.
Mhm.
Not only can you just copy paste code like this into your code, but you can have adaptive paste turned on and it will further tweak it so that it actually looks like your code. So that's pretty nice.
Cool.
Yeah, so this one is cool. I was blown away by this when this feature got introduced because it's just like a nice excuse to not have to go to your web browser to find this sort of information. You can just see this inline, which is cool.
Yeah.
You can also see the different method overload examples too, if that's something you're interested in as well. All right, so now I'm going over to expression parser, and there's a couple things I want to share. So specifically, let's say you just came into this code, you're looking at it for the first time. There's a lot of different parse things going on here, and you just want to know what each one does. So normally, when you hover over a method that was written by like a teammate or by you or something, you don't always get a description of it right away.
Mhm.
Except now, if you've got Copilot, you can choose Describe with Copilot to have it generate a quick summary of what that particular method or class is doing. So really nice. It just saves you some time. It's called on the fly documentation because you're doing it on the fly. You're just hovering over something to quickly see a summary. So you've got stuff like that. And then also sometimes maybe you do want to have documentation for either your future self or for other people. And that's when you might have to write some documentation comments, which is not always the most glamorous thing to do. But now Copilot makes it easy because it'll help you out and do that work for you. So I can do the triple slash thing. And sometimes it takes Copilot a minute to do it. I'm hoping that it does. I feel like the running joke is that even Copilot doesn't like to write dot comments because it's so tedious. But after a
So
couple tries, I can usually get
is
it
it
to work.
telling you that it's thinking about it?
No, and that's something that I wish that it would do. Okay, so here's this quick and easy example.
Yeah.
Um, oh. Thank you, next edit suggestions. I'll remove my other comment up there. But I wish it would have like a loading thing. I'm planning to write like a suggestion on DevCom about let's improve that experience so that at least the user is aware that it's trying.
Yeah.
So of course you can do this with methods as well. So we can go over to like parse term here. Let's see if it'll fill in the blanks, because for a while now, Visual Studio has been able to add in the general formatting that you need for dot comments just by doing the triple slash. But now if you have Copilot, it sometimes likes to return
Okay, cool.
descriptions. Emphasis on sometimes. I think today is the day where the demo gods are like,
Yeah, the first time
no,
I
I'm gonna
just
do
tried
that
it, it seemed to happen. The second time it happened pretty quickly. So
Yeah, did it this time. Full on descriptions for everything, including little remarks, telling you what a term is in this case, which is cool based off the context of what's happening in this method. So good stuff. Cool. Well, hopefully people are enjoying it. I'm gonna we will bookmark so you can hop around. So that was my editor session for the day. And now let's talk a little bit about debugging, because I can't do a productivity talk without talking about cool debugging tools.
absolutely.
So first thing I want to discuss, So first thing I want to discuss are breakpoints, everyone's favorite. And I'm just going to set a couple. Let's go down to this up arrow history navigation one. And maybe I just want to scroll through or just inspect that things are going well. And I want to set a breakpoint at the start of this if statement. However, or actually, let's do it within the if statement. However, I only want to use this breakpoint once. So instead of setting a normal breakpoint, I can also right click in the gutter here in the breakpoint gutter and choose to create a temporary breakpoint. So it's got a little clock icon inside it. It's a little hard to see, but you can open up your breakpoints window to see it in more detail. But this is a breakpoint that once it is hit the first time, it will automatically disable itself. So I'm someone personally who tends to forget to delete my breakpoints when I no longer need them, and this breakpoint does it for me, which is very nice. So let's go ahead and run this app. Sweet. Okay, so this would trigger once I get some history in. So let me do cool. So if I scroll up, we can hit that breakpoint. And if you look at the breakpoint window, you'll notice it's not checked, and that is because it is disabled. So don't have to worry about about manually disabling your breakpoints if you only plan to use it once.
Cool.
All right. Another cool thing I want to show you has to do with conditional breakpoints and trace points. So I'm not going to go full on into conditional breakpoints, but they are basically breakpoints that allow you to hit the breakpoint under a specified condition. So if you wanted to break when history.count is equal to 5 for whatever reason, then you can do that. And trace points act like print statements, except you don't have to modify your code to use them because it's a breakpoint. But when that breakpoint gets hit or crossed, then you can have a message be printed to the output window. But I mentioned both of them because no matter which one you use, you now have Copilot there to help you out with it. So if you're unsure about what condition you might want to set, you can go into the text box where you normally enter it. It'll give you some suggestions based off of what's happening in your app. So there might be a little hard to see, but in this example, there's one where you can hit the breakpoint when buffer.count is greater than 0 or history.count is greater than 5, all that. And similar stuff applies to actions or trace points. So where it says show a message in the output window, I can do the same thing. And I can get messages such as clearing current input with bucker length, and then it'll return the count, or it'll tell me what the history index is. So little things like that that just give you a nice push in the right direction so you don't have to think about everything. So I
Nice.
like that a lot. It's cool. I'll use this history index one actually. Cool. So there's my little trace point looking really cute. And now I'm going to go ahead and just navigate to the end of this method. But also another fun fact, let's say I had other breakpoints going on here. First, I want to give a special shout out to the breakpoints window. Don't have time to go into it in full, but I do want to give a shout out to the fact that you can export and import your breakpoints if you didn't know that. So if
Ooh.
you wanted to do some pairs programming with somebody and you want to make sure they have the same breakpoint setup that you do, or maybe you want them for yourself, like you just finished a breakpoint session and you want to get rid of them, clear out for whatever reason, but get them back later, then you can export them into like an XML file and then import them back in, and it'll be set up for you.
Cool.
Pretty sweet. Yeah, so also now that we have all these breakpoints up, let's say I wanted to reach the end of this if statement. However, if I were to hit step over, I would just constantly be going through each line. It's going to stop at each and every breakpoint in this case. And I don't want that, but also I don't really want to have to delete those breakpoints. Maybe I want them later. And another option is run to click, which I've talked
Mhm.
about before and I use all the time. It lets you run your code's execution up to a specific point that you give it. It's I compare it to having like a fast forward button on a remote control.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do that either because I'm still going to run into the same issue where if I did that, here we go. I'm still going to stop at breakpoints that I don't care about in the moment. So, fun fact, if you hold down the shift key, you can do a force run to click or a force run execute. That will pass any additional loops that you could get caught in or breakpoints or whatever and go to where you want to go if I can use my mouse correctly. I guess that's what keyboard shortcuts are for. I'm more of a mouse gal. Here we go.
Okay.
Sweet. No, we do not want to turn on sticky keys, but you get the idea. So you don't have to skip, or you don't have to get rid of your breakpoints in order to reach a particular point, which is nice. So now
Cool.
that I'm here, yeah, so pretty cool. Breakpoints are awesome. We love breakpoints. And another thing that I think is cool that is not used nearly enough are table visualizers. So these let you view your data when you're debugging in a more readable way. So if you're dealing with large blocks of literal strings or anything like that, you can use a text visualizer typically to pull up a table or pull up a view that lets you see that text in a more readable format. Like maybe especially if you're working with like JSON formatted text or HTML formatted text, there's even HTML and JSON visualizers built into VS that let you see that in its fully formatted state, which is incredibly helpful. And you can even create your own visualizers, although I don't have time to talk about that here, but that's cool. However, one of the newest visualizers in the VS family is the IEnumerable Visualizer. So
Mhm.
this is a table that you can use with any IEnumerable based variable. So for example, I've got history here and um, I can click on the view counter here, or I can use buffer here as well. I'm just gonna use buffer. Let's do that. And click on IEnumerable Visualizer. You can access this via your autos, locals, and watch windows or via the editor via tooltip. But as you can see, you'll get like a little spreadsheet type table of the list of items that you have going on. So this is really good, especially if you've got a class with a lot of different properties, and you can see all the properties as indicated from column to column. This one's really basic since it's just a bunch of characters, but you can get really specific with this.
Yep.
However, some of the newer additions to this feature, if you've used this before and are like, been there, done that, although fun fact, you can export this table to a CSV or an Excel spreadsheet if you want to get more specific with it, is the expressions text box up here. So I also like to call this a playground for Linq expressions. So a lot of people like Linq expressions, right? You use them because I use them.
Sure.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so those are really popular, but sometimes they're not the easiest to debug because Visual Studio likes to not let you break it down sometimes, or maybe you are experimenting with different really complex and that can be hard to debug too. So this has now become a sandbox for enabling you to play around with different expressions and see what works or doesn't work. So now like you can type in the text box like expression stuff. So I can do
Oh,
buffer.
cool. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I can use all those similar stuff, except maybe I don't fully remember how to write a link query right now. It's been a minute. I don't fully remember the syntax, but you'll notice there's a little Copilot star down here, and
Nice.
that's because so 1714 introduced this, and you can describe how do you want to refine the expression. So let's say, uh, write an expression where uh the char is plus. There you go. And when you do that, it'll automatically filter out whatever's going on in your data too. So really helpful. And then of course you can also see the query. So if that's something that you want to use in your code, you can just copy paste that and continue away. I love it.
Oh, that's cool. So you can just use that to practice Linq expressions.
Yeah.
So
It's a Linq sandbox. I know it's
yeah,
called, yep.
that's
It's
awesome.
like, I know it's technically called the IEnumerable Visualizer, but I've been calling it Linq Sandbox ever since that feature got added because that is a time saver.
Nice.
I'd say this is where I wanna call it, but if people want to see a little tease of the, performance profiler, because that also got a recent Copilot edition that I
Of
think
course they
is
do. I
very
want
helpful.
to. I'll
Alright,
speak for all the
cool, let's do
viewers.
it. Yep, but wait, there's more. Alright, so last feature I wanna show, I'm gonna hop over to another method that has more perf issues than this one. So for context, this is a basic console app that's just counting prime numbers up to 1,000,000, no big deal. I'm sure that's not gonna take a lot of time, but usually when you're dealing with perf issues, you want to be able to check stuff like your CPU usage or your memory usage, how much is being consumed, all of that, especially once you start to run into perf issues as you begin to scale your applications for whatever reason. And that's when you can use the very underrated but extremely powerful tool in Visual Studio called the Performance Profiler, which again, I'm going to use all in one search to go to. And if you've never seen this before, good news. One, we did like a whole mini series
Yep.
on it. It's been a minute, but
A while
we've
ago.
talked about it a couple times on this show.
Yep.
It's been a minute. We think we need to bring it back because they're doing some cool stuff right now with this. Um, but yeah, you'll get a menu of a bunch of different tools that you can use to monitor different aspects of your application. So the most popular ones are typically CPU usage and memory usage, but you've also got ones that let you see how long it takes to run a query if you're working with databases, or you can see your async and await usage if you're dealing with a lot of asynchronous methods or your application overall, among other things.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to check the CPU usage one. The target's already set to what I want, but there's really no excuse to what you can or can't profile because you can basically attach to anything. So you can attach to your startup project or a running app. If you wanted to attach to like Notepad and see what its performance is looking like, you could do that. Lots of different options. And I'm going to click start. Although, fun fact, if you're working with like an Aspire project, aka something that involves multiple processes, make sure you've got this option checked. Other than that, also make sure that your mode is set to release and not debug. You can still do perf stuff with debug mode, but it's not going to be as accurate because it's got a debugger attached at that point.
Okay.
So, you know, and we're going to go ahead and start a diagnostic session. And doing this is going to run that app. So it's doing all the work. It counted up to 1,000,000, all the different prime numbers. Seemingly, it didn't take that long, but we can see for ourselves. And so at this point, what Visual Studio was doing was basically taking a trace of our application as it was running. And now it's going to load up that trace in a very nice, presentable way so that we can inspect this easily. So you got stuff like grass that's letting you see the different CPU usage categories that are happening. You can see a timeline of the CPU usage. You can identify key places that are worth looking into via like a hot path, especially like here's the sections taking up a lot of CPU, 72% on this line. That's interesting. But the cool detail I wanted to hone in on today is under top insights, and that's because there's now an Ask Copilot button that can analyze this for you. Okay, something that
Oh.
to always do. So it'll go into the chat and give you a full breakdown of what's happening here. It's telling me I'm performing 2 tasks, collecting prime numbers and allocating and sorting a large array of 10 million random integers. That's based off the context of the entire code base. And then it's going to identify areas of opportunity to improve the space. But if you want the TLDR version, you just go back to Top Insights and it'll tell me what the issue is and where it's at. So optimize prime calculation algorithm. And specifically, it'll tell me how to maybe fix it. So in this case, it's suggesting that I replace the current prime counting logic with an algorithm that I haven't used since college to reduce iterations and improve performance. So really nice way to quickly figure out what's going on with your app and how it can be fixed from a performance standpoint, which I think is nice. So
Cool.
take advantage of using Copilot because
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's made the performance profiler in particular that much more powerful and that much more of an incentive for people to use because you don't have to interpret this entire set of information if you don't want to by yourself.
That is awesome.
That is, yeah,
We could
that's
probably
all the
go
stuff
all
I got
day
for
and do
today.
these, but this would be a good point to wrap up. So, quick question. Are all of these things documented in the help files? So, if I just peruse through the doc, will I come across most of these things? Because there's hundreds of additional ones.
Yeah, right. Good question. I'd say most of this is documented. I'd say I think 98% of it is documented. As for how easy it is to discover that documentation, that definitely varies from feature to feature,
Yeah.
which is frustrating, most definitely. um, yeah, I'd definitely say with the Copilot ones, those are probably the most well-documented ones
Yeah.
these days, just whether via blog post or actual official MS Learn docs.
So, if you go into
Or go
tools
ahead.
options and hit the help button, then it will show you help on each individual screen. Yes, that's a kind of manual one at a time way, but there is a help topic on the options. There's a help topic on options. So you can see everything in the options dialog. That'll show you a big chunk of these things. And then I guess you can just go
Yeah,
through.
you can see a lot of that. Yeah, but in addition to what you said, basically, I again also want to give shout out to All in One Search for adding this Ask Copilot button for anything that tier two. So if you don't know what the performance profiler is, then you can typically ask Copilot and it will tell you what it is and how to use it and all that additional detail, which is nice as well. So if you don't want to leave BS in order to learn about a lot of this stuff, then I think Copilot's getting better at recognizing different PS features. I've certainly used it to craft demos and things before where I'm like, I want to use X feature. Where in my app can I showcase that that PS tool sort of deal?
Right.
But yeah, I think there's definitely still room for improvement in the documentation space because part of what makes these features cool is because they're still not used as much as I feel like they should be. They're not mainstream yet. So, yeah, there's still work to be done.
All right, cool. Those are all awesome. Thanks so much for agreeing to swap seats and do the demoing. It's awesome, as always. Hope you guys enjoyed that. We will see you next time on Visual Studio Toolbox.